Welcome to the APSS contract updates training for PSS supervisors. We're going to begin today by just taking a look at the Human Resources website and where the contract can be found on that website. You can come to the main Human Resources page, and there is a Faculty Staff tab at the top, and then you'll click on Policies, Leaves, and Contracts, and then Union Contracts. This will have all our hourly contracts on this web page, and then the professional support staff one is the very first link here. This is the updated contract that is now live, effective as of October 1st of 2021. And this is a searchable PDF, so you can use your control find function to be able to search for various things throughout the document, as well as reviewing the table of contents, or we have an index as well that has the alphabetized organization of the different content. We'll begin by jumping into our contract review. So this new contract is for a 4-year period starting October 1st of 2021, and it'll run through September 30th of 2025. The first thing we did for this upcoming contract is we worked on reorganizing some of the sections, specifically sections 7, 8, and 11. We had some additional updates to 7 and 8 that we'll dive into a little later, but section 11 of the contract was just some reorganization. We also removed a list of position titles that was formerly in the appendix of the contract. And instead of having a list that became outdated over time and the duration of the contract, we decided to remove that list from the appendix, and it'll be now housed on the Human Resources website, which will give us the opportunity to keep it more updated on a regular basis. We also had a couple tables of contents in the front of the contract and an index, and that was a little bit confusing. So we unified the contract to have just a single table of contents and then an index or alphabetized list at the end of the contract to provide a little bit more clarity and ease of navigating the contract that's out there. We also had a number of letters of agreement that were part of the appendices of the contract, and we've moved all those into the contract where applicable. So they're just now part of the body of the contract language, and we eliminated those that were no longer applicable or necessary. So we just cleaned that up a bit. We also resolved some just general spacing and formatting issues to make the document easier to navigate. And then there was some language that was no longer applicable or relevant. It had either specific dates and timelines that the language was associated with, or there were titles and positions that are no longer at the university in the way they were listed in the contract. So we did some cleanup there as well. So those were kind of the overview of cleanup things that we accomplished. And so now we'll dive into the actual updates of the language and the changes within the contract. These changes are going to go through in the order they are listed in the contract. So if you need to cross-reference this training at a different time, or you want to follow along in the new contract with where we're talking about, this is in the order of the contract itself. So the first section is on probationary staff members, and we took the opportunity to consolidate language into a single section. There were a couple places within the contract that we had probationary staff referenced, and so we wanted to make it easy to find all that language in one unified place. The salary continuation for probationary staff members was previously 1 day per month, non-cumulative, and that didn't fit with the new Michigan Paid Medical Leave Act. And so we needed to update the contract to reflect compliance with that new act. And so it is now 40 hours upon hire for probationary staff to use. And that's within their first 6 months, which is the duration of their probationary period. Additionally, we just clarified the usage of work as a temp If a temporary employee is hired into a PSS position or the PSS position they are temping in, there's some previous confusion over whether that temp time could be counted towards meeting the minimum requirements of the position. And we clarified that yes, that time can count towards them meeting the requirements of the position. The next section is on academic year staff members. And for this, we clarified the process for identifying academic staff schedules and the notification of that, so that staff understand what their dates of work are for each academic year, and helped create some clarity there. So you'll see we have the language that was updated in the contract here, and it's just providing a little bit clearer picture of how this process will work. So schedules are going to be provided in writing to the staff member upon the commencement of employment. So as soon as they're hired, they'll receive what that academic year schedule looks like for them. And then prior to the beginning of each winter semester, notification of the beginning and end dates for the next academic year must be provided to Human Resources, who will communicate to the staff member, Alliance President, and Chief Alliance Steward in writing any changes or updates for that and those upcoming year dates. Subsequent changes to the beginning and the end dates of the academic year schedule can be made by mutual agreement between supervisor and staff member. So you still have the ability to coordinate if those changes need to be made after that notification period. And then Human Resources will just need to be included in that so that we can provide notification of those changes in writing. Next is the section on student employees. This was just adding some clarifying language that student employees, while we want to continue to support those students getting experiences in our institution and at jobs throughout the university, these positions are not intended to replace a union position or the union work. We also, for Title IX compliance, needed to add some language regarding Title IX regulations around investigations and disciplinary matters. And this is just saying that for all of those discipline and investigations, decisions implicating a Title IX violation, the procedures will go to what the university Title IX policies are outlined for the university. And so that's going to follow those policies where applicable. The next section is on discipline. And so we did a number of things in this section. We clarified the discipline process as well as terminology. And so ultimately discipline should really start with informal measures. So things like verbal discussions, constructive feedback, coaching, maybe professional development opportunities to help a person improve, or even performance improvement plans. So that's the informal measures before a formal discipline process even begins, and the things that we would encourage folks to use first and foremost to try and provide corrective feedback and action so that somebody can make those changes prior to even needing formal discipline. If formal discipline is needed and those measures are pursued, it's intended to be progressive and constructive. And we previously had a table within the contract that seemed to have caused some confusion. So we removed the table and clarified in the plain language that for the process, the progressive discipline and the steps in order of which discipline will move is first a written warning, and that's going to be the first written warning. And then there's a second written warning, then options for disciplinary layoff and termination of employment. This doesn't prevent corrective action extending beyond the first and second warnings if it's egregious enough to warrant more immediate action. But in most cases, we'll see an opportunity to provide a first written warning that comes after those informal measures. And if the behavior or the issue we're trying to address isn't resolved after a first written warning, then a second written warning can be utilized, and then discipline will progress from there. When giving discipline, a supervisor should notify the staff member of what the discipline is for and their right to contact the Alliance for representation. It's up to the employee whether they want alliance representation or not, but that opportunity needs to be offered when giving some type of formal discipline. So you can still do those corrective actions with, coaching and having those conversations informally first, but when giving a formal discipline, you need to notify that staff member of what it's going to be for, and that can be a general notice of the topic that it's going to cover, and then that they have that right for alliance representation. And when possible, that notice should be given 1 business day in advance of a disciplinary meeting. So when the disciplinary meeting is where you're going to give that formal discipline and provide the first written notice, second written notice, whatever that disciplinary measure is, you need to give them 1 business day in advance when possible. Obviously, again, where there's an egregious action that needs immediate attention, that may not always be possible, and it's necessary to have an immediate conversation. However, when possible, we're going to give that 1 business day notice in advance. Additionally, copies of formal discipline will be sent to the employee and human resources for their personnel file. The alliance will also receive a copy unless the employee requests no notification is provided to the alliance. The university will not consider prior infractions older than 4 years when imposing formal discipline. However, exceptions can be made in cases of serious misconduct or where a staff member is showing a pattern serious enough to warrant consideration of the previous formal discipline. The next section is on the complaint procedure. So complaints, we really wanted to define them and clarify when this process is utilized and what that process is. And so for the purposes of the contract, we have defined a complaint as an issue that is not appropriate subject for a grievance as defined in section 6 of this agreement. That's the exact language from the contract. And so we talk about what those things are that would fall under that complaint piece. In the case where a staff member wants to submit a complaint, either the staff member or they can contact the Chief Alliance Steward of the union and they can submit the complaint in writing to the Director of Staff Relations. The staff member has a right to alliance representation during any complaint procedure or conflict resolution process if they wish. Complaints will be responded to as soon as reasonable, but no more than 7 days out from the submission of the complaint, unless that timeline is extended by mutual agreement. And that mutual agreement is between the university. So typically that would be the Director of Staff Relations who's leading the complaint process, or it's, and then the Chief Alliance Steward and staff member, whoever is bringing forward the complaint. The next piece we're going to talk about here is section 7 of the contract. And in this section, we did a lot of work consolidating all vacancy and transfer information to this section. And we defined and clarified that process for all parties involved. And we moved some of the language that was previously in other sections. And so we just wanted to make sure we had a robust description of vacancies and transfers that was easy to follow and well-defined. So some of the definitions that we created for this section to help provide clarity. A vacancy is going to be a position that was previously held by a bargaining unit member that needs to be filled, or a newly created PSS position. We use this term necessary parties in this section, and for this section's purposes, necessary parties are defined as the appointing officer, Alliance President, Chief Alliance Steward, Affirmative Action, and Human Resources. We also define internal, and internal is going to be a staff member that holds a bargaining unit position currently. And then finally, qualified. We defined that as meeting the required qualifications of the position description. All vacancies will be posted for a minimum of 7 days, and the posting itself will include the classification, the department, location of or locations of the work, the work schedule, and the position description. Upon offer, the university will notify the selected staff member of any known or impending changes to the position. So if during the posting period, something changed with the work location or work schedule, any of those types of things, if those changed in the time from when it was posted to when the offer is made, the university will notify that staff member of any of those changes, either pending or that have been officially changed. Also, search committees for PSS positions will need to include a PSS member, and this was something that was there prior to this bargaining cycle as well. We call out in section 7 external postings. Typically, these vacancies will be posted as an open search available for both internal and external candidates. That's going to be the default for positions. And then all qualified internal applicants will receive an interview, again, referencing how we've defined qualified in the definition section of vacancies and transfers. The search committee is going to need to present a strong justification for not selecting a qualified internal applicant. And following interviews, the more senior staff member will receive the assignment when selecting between equivalent internal applicants. And so that's where seniority is coming into play here is if you have two equally qualified candidates and there's not a justification for selecting one over the other. We then move into covering internal postings. For these, when all necessary parties, again, referencing the definition for necessary parties, agree, a job may be posted and limited to internal applicants. The university reserves the right to require a posting be internal only, and all qualified applicants will receive an interview. Again, this is for internal postings only. The search committee, again, is going to need to present that strong justification for not selecting a qualified applicant. And again, when all things are equal after interviews, the more senior staff member would receive the assignment. And then the final piece we have for the different types of postings, we also have an opportunity for organizational advancement. And in organizational advancement, when all necessary parties agree, a bargaining unit member may be offered a vacant position under the same appointing officer. So we provide clarity here where the organizational advancement may occur, and that's under the same appointing officer. So in this next piece, we streamlined and shortened the time frames to prevent adding additional days in the process when making offers. The search committee is going to provide HR with the non-selection reasons, and then human resources, alliance president, and the chief alliance steward will approve those non-selection reasons for the internal applicants. We just are spelling out what that process looks like here. And then the human resources officer or their designee will notify internal applicants with the rationale for the decision. I think most times in practice, this is ending up being the committee chair, the search committee chairperson to provide that. And then within 1 business day of that notification, any non-selected internal applicants can contact the Chief Alliance Steward to request a meeting with the search committee chairperson, an HR representative, and an alliance representative to discuss the reason for non-selection if desired. Again, we shorten this to 1 day. And then within 3 business days of that meeting, the alliance must notify human resources, GVSU, that the meeting has been step 1 of the grievance process if they wish to pursue the grievance process. And then if a meeting is requested or a grievance is filed, the position wouldn't be able to be filled until that process is completed. The employment team, though, is going to be working closely with search committees on the non-selection reasons to help ensure there's a more detailed understanding and communication of those non-selection reasons to the staff member, providing clarity up front and preventing some back and forth that has happened in the past. So again, we're just trying to clarify that process, streamline things, and shorten timeframes so that we can make offers more quickly upon a selection, and provide still the notification time periods for any grievance to be filed. We also talk about transfers in this section. So for transfers, we've defined this as the change of a bargaining unit member's position within the university. Transfers will be done with the consent of the staff member whenever possible, but when there's no reasonable alternative, a transfer may be involuntary. When involuntary transfer is required, the least qualified senior staff member will be transitioned to a similar position. So either classification, full-time or part-time, all those things will be considered for the similar position, or be given the option of electing an unpaid leave of absence. If a staff member does elect the unpaid leave of absence, they'll maintain eligibility only for the next vacancy in their classification for which they're qualified. And then a staff member, if they choose not to take the next vacancy for which they're qualified, it will be considered that they have resigned, and then that person shall be disqualified from consideration when the position from which they were transferred is posted as well. This section also talks about temporary work assignments. So when a staff member's position has been temporarily eliminated or substantially reduced due to slow periods, they may be assigned to do other tasks without an increase or decrease in their regular pay until the end of the slow period. But involuntary temporary work assignments shall be held to a minimum, so we will try to keep those as minimal as possible when they're involuntary. The next section is the seniority and reduction in force. So this is section 8 of the contract. And we did some work here consolidating the seniority and reduction in force language to the same section and defined and clarified the process, because most often where seniority is coming into play and needing the most clarity is around the reduction in force process when that's required. We will, as a university, make a good faith effort to use reduction by attrition first and foremost. But if further reduction is required, a minimum of 10 business days notice or equivalent severance pay will be provided to a staff member. Staff members will have 10 business days prior to the layoff date to respond with one of 3 options. Those options for laid off staff members will include a reassignment to any open job in a similar or lower classification level for which they meet the required qualifications of the position description. If they're reassigned to a lower classification, the staff member will be paid their previous rate for 6 months. And after that point, they will then be paid the lower rate of the job that they were reassigned to. They also have the option for bumping into a position of the least senior person in the same or any lower classification level within the same full or part-time status. The only exception to this is dispatcher positions. They're exempt from the bumping process due to the specialized nature of those positions. And then the third option is they can elect a voluntary layoff. Failure to notify HR of a selection of one of those 3 options will result in defaulting to the electing a voluntary layoff. Full-time staff members will not be required to accept an assignment to a part-time position. And then the same is true for non-academic year staff and academic year positions. We're not going to require somebody to work in a non-academic year position that was an academic year and vice versa. And then academic year staff who are bumped may only be bumped into other academic year positions in addition to the other 2 choices that are provided on that previous slide. Those staff members that are on a layoff or reassigned to a position under the provisions of 8.5 within the contract shall be entitled to recall to an open available position in the same job title or in the same compensation classification level for 18 months or the length of their seniority, whichever is less. So the next section of the contract we're going to go into is a regular work week. And we clarified here turnaround time. There was some confusion over this language and what this was trying to say. And so we indicated that regularly scheduled shifts shall have at least 8 hours of turnaround time before their next regular scheduled shift begins. In the event that a regular scheduled work is performed within the 8-hour turnaround period, that work would be eligible for compensation at the rate of 1.5 times. We've got only regular scheduled hours will be considered for the purposes of determining the 8-hour turnaround period. So if somebody picked up additional shift or had an additional assignment or something of that nature, we're only looking at the regular work schedule for turnaround time. And then work schedules may be modified by mutual agreement between the employee and staff member and the supervisor. The next section we have here is on classification review. So for this piece of the contract, we outlined a clearer process for these types of requests and identified how staff members are able to initiate a review. It was a little ambiguous in our previous contract whether staff members could also initiate a review, so we provided that clarity in our updated language. So bargaining unit members or supervisors may request a review of an assigned classification of a position. Staff members may contact the APSS VP for the union or human resources, and either party can provide information regarding the process and the job analysis questionnaire that would be needed to be completed as part of that process. And staff members can request a review once per calendar year as necessary. And then supervisors can reach out directly to human resources for information on the process and the job analysis questionnaire. The first step in the process is going to be once they receive the job analysis questionnaire, is the staff member is going to need to complete that and submit to their supervisor for review. Certainly a staff member and supervisor, if this is a joint request, can work on that piece together. And then once submitted, that'll go to the human resources department, and the job analysis questionnaire will need to also include a proposed updated job description and any other documentation that might support the request for the review. There will be an assessment team that will request a meeting with the staff member and supervisor to review and discuss the completed job analysis questionnaire and any other materials provided, like job description or any other supporting documentation. And then if the assessment team believes that a job site visit is warranted, they'll schedule one. The assessment team is going to include a representative from the Human Resources Office, as well as a representative from, an Alliance Vice President will also participate in that. So a rep from Human Resources, as well as the Alliance Vice President. They're going to score the survey, have a score for the survey instrument and supporting rationale form, and that will be shared with the staff member and supervisor once they've reviewed all that documentation. The classification review will be completed within 45 working days unless there's an agreement between the Human Resources representative and Alliance Vice President on an extension of that time frame for whatever reason. After receiving the survey results, the staff member and the supervisor can choose to meet with the assessment team for additional input or clarification. And then the staff member or supervisor can appeal the decision to the Joint Review Committee. The Joint Review Committee is going to include 2 representatives from the Human Resources Office, as well as 2 representatives from the Alliance. And those representatives will be different than those that served on the assessment team. If the Joint Review Committee is not able to reach a consensus, then the university will decide on the classification for the position. The Alliance can appeal the decision through arbitration, and that's outlined in our collective bargaining agreement as well. The next section is on holidays. Martin Luther King Jr. Day has been added as a university holiday. So that's been added to all positions, but we've incorporated the language into the holidays that are defined within the APSS contract. We also did some cleanup on language for the other holidays and the way they were listed. And we changed the Christmas break to winter break to be more inclusive in our language and various religious holiday observations. And then we clarified holidays and scheduling for those that work on an alternative schedule. And so this is the language from the contract. It says for staff members working on an alternative schedule other than Monday to Friday, the paid holidays will be adjusted within the same week after consulting with the staff member's supervisor. So staff members and supervisors are going to work on this together to make sure that they get an observed holiday within their regular work week. So an example of this is if a staff member works a Tuesday through Saturday schedule and the holiday falls on a Monday. They should work with their supervisor to determine an alternate day in that same week to observe the holiday during their regular work week, while keeping in mind that the week runs Sunday to Saturday. So, and in most cases, we prefer that the day closest to the actual holiday is used for observation, but there is some flexibility there depending on the work schedule and things if that's not the most preferable day for the department and operational needs and the staff member. So that can be coordinated, but that's the suggested usage is for the day closest to the actual holiday. So in that type of example, employees would observe the holiday on a Tuesday, taking that day off of work and then work their regular schedule Wednesday through Saturday. This will prevent overtime or additional hours beyond those regularly scheduled from being incurred due to the holiday week beyond what the staff member regularly works. The next piece we covered was work on a holiday. We provided some clarity here regarding closure days. And in addition to closure day holiday pay, they will receive a rate of 1 1/2 times their regular hourly rate instead of this being added to their vacation balance. So previously they received this same allocation instead of it being paid outright on their paycheck. They received a sum of hours that got populated into their vacation balance. Instead, they're going to be paid for performing the work on that day, that holiday that they actually worked, and then they'll have the added bonus of being paid 1 1/2 times their regular rate for those hours as well. So again, this is no change in how this was executed before, other than it was added to a vacation balance instead of a straight payout. So we're moving to a straight payout for this. Under the holiday pay section, we did clarify schedules during holiday weeks for those that work less than a 40-hour schedule. And so this is the language from the contract. It says holiday pay shall be 8 hours if full-time or 4 hours if part-time at the staff member's hourly rate. Staff member and supervisor will work together to adjust for the holiday to not exceed their normal scheduled hours for the week. So for example, if the staff member regularly works 30 hours plus a week, they should adjust their hours in the holiday week to accommodate being paid 8 hours for the holiday. And if the staff member works less than 30, then they should adjust their holiday or their hours during the holiday week to accommodate being paid for 4 hours for the holiday. So if they work regularly 6-hour days, 5 days a week, they're going to need to make some kind of adjustment to be able to accommodate being paid 8 hours on one of those days. So they might shave off a couple hours, a couple days, each of the days. How that gets, I guess, coordinated is between the supervisor and staff member, but they should account for being paid that 8 hours or being paid that 4 hours, and then figure out a schedule to maintain their regular work hours for that week with those accommodations. The next section of the contract we are going to cover is going to be the use of vacation time. So vacation is a mutual benefit to staff members and the university. Supervisors should make every effort to accommodate requests for use of vacation time. But if a vacation request needs to be denied based on the needs of the department, When that is done and somebody's not able to take vacation as requested, the supervisor should work with that staff member to ensure that those requested vacation hours can be accommodated on alternative dates that are both at the convenience of the staff member and the department. So that's when those situations where vacation is requested and it can't be approved for needs of the department. Additionally, seniority will determine who can use vacation time when limitations are required on usage in the department, unless somebody had a vacation that was previously approved by the supervisor. The next piece we're going to cover is use of salary continuation. So for this, we enhanced bereavement usage to be more inclusive. We had some limitations regarding the relationships that were defined within the contract. So we broadened this a little bit to be more inclusive of those different family relationships and structures, and provide more of an opportunity for folks to utilize that bereavement for their close family members. So the specifics of who's included in that now is spelled out very clearly in the contract, but we did enhance that benefit. Additionally, there's the clause in the contract regarding severe weather usage. We did provide an additional 8 hours of severe weather usage for salary continuation. This was previously only 8 hours. It is now moved up to 16 hours. And this is where staff are not able to come to campus because of severe weather, or they're not set up to work remote or not able to do their jobs remotely in the case of severe weather. This was in response to the remote status policy that was implemented earlier this year. And so we clarified that this is for usage around severe weather issues and lack of ability to work remotely, because we recognize that while we've made progress in getting folks able to work remote, it's not feasible for everybody when severe weather comes about, and that remote work status policy that was implemented earlier this year. The next piece is on short-term disability, and we previously had the opportunity for directed donations that was out of compliance with IRS regulations, and so we needed to replace that previous direct donation process to be in compliance, and we created a vacation donation pool that staff members on short-term disability can draw from if all their personal leave balances like salary continuation and vacation are exhausted. Next, we're going to cover financials. So one of the great things we did with this current contract is we consolidated our wage schedules to one table for each group of employee. We have clerical PSS, technical PSS, and engineering PSS. And there was previously many wage tables based on hire dates. And so these have been consolidated to one table for each of those groups. So there's a lot more clarity for supervisors and staff where they are on those wage tables and which one is applicable to them, because there's only one. We also have removed the development pay program and incorporated that into the base wage. Instead of having some requirements to obtain those additional wages, that's now being included in the new performance evaluation plan system and process. So folks can do development plans with their supervisor and really focus on professional development that is individualized and done as part of that annual review cycle. And it's targeting individual goals and needs of the employee and their role and future advancement opportunities. And so by removing this layer of compliance, checking a box, we've been able to shift this more to that individualized plan. In addition to the wage table consolidation and the removal of the development plan program as it currently exists and incorporating it into the evaluation system, there is an annual table adjustment that will be done with alignment to the AP and faculty salary adjustment program, and that'll be from a 0 to 3% increase based on what the faculty AP adjustment program provides in any given year for the 4 years of this contract. And then we also provided for the folks in the defined benefit plan, employees have a pickup rate for that contribution. And so that has been locked in at 5% for the duration of this contract. And then we've also expanded the early retirement eligibility. It was previously 55 to 60 years old, and now it's been expanded to 55 to 62 years. That covers the majority of our contract updates for this bargaining cycle. We're really excited about some of the things that we've been able to accomplish together with our APSS union bargaining unit members. And so we wanted to provide this recorded training option so folks can review it at their leisure and when they have the opportunity. But also we're going to host some Q&A sessions because we recognize you probably will have some questions about some of the nuance. So we'll be hosting 2 sessions coming up. One will be Thursday, October 7th from 2 to 3 p.m. And the other one will be Tuesday, October 12th from 2 to 3 p.m. These are both available for sign up on Sprout. So feel free to go out and schedule yourself to join us at one of those. If you have questions or just want to hear the questions others have, you'll receive the Zoom link information with your registration. And certainly if you're unable to join one of the sessions, please contact the Human Resources Department directly, and we can assist you with any specific questions if you're not available at one of those Q&As. And with that, we'd like to thank you for your time. Please take the opportunity upon conclusion of this video to take the required 5-question quiz just to check for completion of this training program. And we look forward to seeing you at either the Q&As or getting your questions outside of those. Thanks so much and have a great one.